Unexplained phenomena can't always be captured through audio or video. Sometimes, our eyes and ears are all we have to separate the thin veil between the spirit world and reality. This is the Y-Files. Ghost Stories Declassified. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Y-Files. We are exploring the theories, history, and the why of paranormal phenomena. My name is Bryce.
My name's Mariah.
And we are so happy you've joined us for another episode. First and foremost, I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone who liked, subscribed, and commented on our first episode on YouTube, and everyone who downloaded that first episode. Honestly, the reception we got was just, it really blew me away. It was a lot more than I was actually expecting, and so much feedback and so much good feedback. Kind of makes me worried, but I'm really happy we're still here doing this, and we're in October, and I think this is our unofficial Halloween episode.
Yes.
I mean, Mariah put on her jack-o'-lantern shirt, so
I did.
that means
I painted my nails black.
and she changed her hair color.
And I changed my hair color.
You really do look very, very seasonal.
Thank you.
It's better.
And we have spooky cookies.
Tell us the story of the spooky cookies, Mariah.
Well, we were worried because we couldn't find them at the grocery store. And we were very sad. But then we went grocery shopping this last weekend.
Yeah.
And we found them.
Well, I was worried because it was the beginning of October. I was in the spooky spirit. I was ready. I was ready for everything about Halloween, and I said, I'm going to be one of those people that start Halloween early this year because, truthfully, I haven't really celebrated Halloween, really in 5 years.
Yeah, and we decorated.
We
forgot to light the candle.
Oh,
well, it's
Go
okay.
get a candle. Go get a lighter really quick. I'll let everyone know about our decorations. As you can see, we have some beautiful paper jack-o'-lanterns. We really like that. That's a nice touch. Something I'm really proud of is this skull that I bought, and I lit a candlestick upon its head and melted it, and now it's stuck there, and I thought that was a really crafty and clever way of getting into the spooky spirit. Mariah has a pumpkin spice candle, but she has those all year round, so it's really not that interesting. But we like it nonetheless. It smells great.
It does.
And accompanied with our cookies, we are sipping on some wonderful iced Americanos. It is our drink of choice. And anyway, sit back and relax. We have some incredible callers. Some of our friends that we knew who had some really interesting, unexplained paranormal experiences. We had them call in with their stories to share them with us, and we are so grateful that they were able to do that because I know it's really hard, and it's kind of. Mariah was asking me the other day about a ghost story that I had in front of some friends, and I didn't realize how vulnerable that actually makes you feel to share a ghost story because you feel a little crazy. And I think this is a big reason of why it's special whenever we are able to create an open space to share stories like that. Because it is hard. It's weird. It's really difficult to I don't know, keep a straight face whenever you're telling someone your ghost story because you're afraid of them judging you. But nevertheless, we have some interesting calls coming in. But first, I had a video to show you.
Also, we want to hear your ghost stories.
Oh, yeah. Before we jump into these first couple of videos, send us your spooky encounters. You can send them to us at y.files.team@gmail.com. We would really love to hear what you have to say, what you've experienced, and we want to feature your stories here on the show the same way that we're having our callers on today. So feel free to email us your spooky encounters and just give us all the details, and we'd love to work with you. Outside of that, we are also now on Twitter. And I think I'm having too much fun with that, but you can tweet at us after each episode at YFiles Podcast, and we're using the hashtag YFilesPod. So check it out. We are tweeting some ridiculous polls about the least spooky day of the week and other things like that. So just feel free to follow us and let us know what you think of the show. So we appreciate it.
I think you should do a candy corn poll.
What do you mean?
Do you like candy corn, yes or no?
What?
It's so controversial.
It is?
Yeah, a lot of people I feel like you either hate it or you love it.
I love it.
I love it too, but a lot of people like hate it.
We're a candy corn household.
Yeah, we're eating candy corn for dinner.
It's just the closest you can get to eating candle wax. I feel like it's like
It's good though.
It's like edible candle wax. If candle wax tasted the way it smelled, it's candy corn.
Yeah, but a lot of people hate candy corn.
I didn't know this.
Yeah.
This is a new
So
thing.
you should do a poll.
Okay.
About candy corn.
All right. Well, all right. So tell me what you think about this first video. Now, this one's really freaky, and I want to give a little bit of context for our listeners who are not watching. But this video was titled "Fire Station Electrical Error."
Jesus Christ. Everything's going all fucking haywire. We got alarms going off. Fucking Ryan's out on fucking patrol. Look at a fucking poltergeist or some shit in here. Oh, that! Oh, no, this. Holy shit. No fucking way did that just fucking happen. Fucking no fucking way. No fucking shit did that just fucking happen.
So I went in and added those bleeps in, and so I got pretty familiar with this video, and both hilarious and terrifying. This is one of my favorite videos now, my most favorite paranormal videos, because if it's staged, I'm not even mad because it's so well done. It like everything is going off, the door slamming, the guy's reaction.
Yeah, it seems genuine.
It does seem genuine, just based on his language and the way he reacts is just so, I don't know, believable. Because I think that's what a lot of us would be like in that situation. But honestly, I can't even imagine being in a room with that many noise making machines. Like he had like 5 different alarms going off, and door shutting. Like the worst thing that would happen here at our house is our crock pot would turn on and off, and we would never know it. Don't you think?
I don't know. I mean, our fridge door was, moving the other day.
It was?
Yeah. Whenever I was doing the dishes and I thought that you were like opening the fridge or whatever. The fridge was like open, but the door was like
swinging,
like back and forth, like lightly. Like, like sometimes whenever you open the fridge too hard and it like the door swings back and forth. Well,
it had that like momentum and it was just like shaking.
Yeah. It was doing that.
Yeah.
But like it had been open. I don't know. I just left the fridge door open for a while. For some reason, I didn't shut it while I was doing the dishes.
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah, it was moving.
Wild. So we are having our own spooky encounters here in the Y-Files household.
Yeah.
Okay. Also, I wanted to mention that I'm blinking my eyes a lot. It's because I got contacts, and I'm getting used to them. It's really weird. I just got them. I've struggled. It takes me like 10 minutes to put them in and take them out. I hurt my eyes a lot, but it's worth it. I just think I'm going blind in my left eye. I don't know if my contact isn't fitting right. This is just a little life update. I just wanted to talk about it a little bit. Mm-hmm. My left eye is usually blurry. I don't know if that means my contact lens doesn't fit my eye. But if I'm going blind, it's purely just for aesthetic reasons, and that's the worst reason to go blind. It's because you choose to not wear glasses.
I am legally blind in my left eye.
Are you really?
Yeah.
My left eye is worse than my right. But the thing about not wearing glasses, it's making me feel weird. I feel self-conscious because all of a sudden I start looking at my forehead. My forehead looks 2 times bigger. My eyes look beady. My skin looks more like skin. I'm not hiding behind those frames. But anyway, so that's a little life update. Got contacts. I'm blinking a lot because they go blurry. Then it's clear. Then they go blurry. I'm getting used to it, though. It's pretty neat. Okay, so to lighten the mood a little bit, I have another clip that's super similar to that first one, but a little bit different spin on it. Okay, to start off, this is like a Snapchat video or whatever. It has like text over it, and it says, "My daughter is upstairs playing Ouija with her friends," and it's showing this guy's hand at a what do you call this?
Breaker box.
Breaker box. I was gonna say power box. I'm like, I don't think that's.
No, I think you can call it that too.
Yeah, I think your term is the correct one. The breaker box. All right, let's watch. It's the little things. But yeah, that was a
That is mean.
that would absolutely terrorize me if I was upstairs, like playing with a Ouija board with my friends, and all of a sudden the lights started going on and off like
Yeah.
that. But I don't know. That's pretty fun. That's like a really funny video. I wanted to add that in as a little lighthearted thing compared to that first one.
I wonder how many people's experiences are because of reasons like that.
Absolutely. I just got a flashback to the first time you and I watched the original Exorcist movie. Do you remember this? I mean, this was like 5 years ago.
Yeah, didn't the TV like go off or
The
something?
power went out.
Yeah, the power went out on the.
I fell asleep. We were laying on the floor, and we were watching it with your roommate, and me and the roommate had both fallen asleep, and you were the only one, and you never seen The Exorcist.
Yeah.
And we both had.
Yeah.
So we left the newbie awake alone at like midnight watching The Exorcist by herself, and the power went out halfway through. So I woke up like really startled because you were like shaking me to wake up. Like you were really freaked out.
Yeah.
Because the power went out. And
Also, same roommate. I was watching The Shining, I think, for one of the first times with her, and she fell asleep.
Oh, really?
Leaving me alone to watch The Shining.
That's a bad first experience. But
Yeah.
Shining is
Thanks, Cassie.
it's a great movie, isn't it?
Yeah, it is really good.
Yeah, we've been trying to dive into more Halloween movies almost every night, but we are busy people, unfortunately, so we can't watch them every night. That's what
We pretty much do.
I'm trying to keep up with the cool people on Twitter who are like, "Hey, watching 31 scary movies. Where did you watch last night? What'd you watch today? What'd you watch the other day?" And I'm like, I can't do that. I'm trying. I cannot watch.
Well, but, we have been watching. If we don't watch a scary movie at least every night, we watch an episode of our scary show.
Yeah, Haunting of Hill House, and it's our second watch through actually, and I
They just
loved
came
it.
out with a second season.
They did. It's what is it called? Haunting of
Bly House. I
Bly
think.
House.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought that was super interesting, and because like the contrast. I won't go too much into it, but the contrast of the typical scary house, haunted house tropes that you get out of it. The contrast is of having that with reality, like the real world, because you see these kids who were in a haunted house, but then you see them as adults dealing with real world problems, real scary stuff, and still being haunted by what terrorized them in that house. And to me, that is a super original take in a really great way of contrasting that horror, showing that trauma lingered, So I don't know. It's an incredible show. I love watching it, and I don't remember all the little details, so I'm pretty excited that we're about halfway through it, and I don't really remember how it ends. So
I remember how it ends, but I don't remember a lot of the stuff in between. So it's really good though. It's really spooky.
it'll be a trip. So I think that's about it. But I just wanted to show those videos to kick things off today. But again, thank you so much for checking out our channel and subscribing and liking and commenting. We really appreciate all the kind words. We really hope you enjoyed today's Ghost Stories Declassified. So let's just jump right into our first call.
Okay.
All right. Joining us is Haley. Hi, Haley.
Hello, how are you guys?
Hey, we're great. Thanks so much
Good.
for calling in today. So we hear you have a really good ghost story, and we're excited to hear it.
Yeah. Well, I never had an experience before, I always liked Halloween and stuff, and it's just funny because about 10 years ago, I remember it being around Halloween time. So at the same time, this time of year is kind of scarred for me.
Oh, really?
But I still like spooky stuff, but there's stuff I don't mess with now because of it, Um,
Wow. When was this?
2010.
Okay. So 10 years ago.
Yeah, that was a bad year. But I was just working. I hadn't gone back to school yet or anything. And I was looking for an apartment because my sister was getting married and her fiance moved in, so I was like, I better get out of here, because you didn't want to be the third wheel. So I was looking for an apartment, and it was all bills paid, incredible place, and it was on the east side of Norman, so it was pretty old, and I didn't know the history behind it, and I didn't really care because nothing had ever happened before. And so I remember the street was called Twisted Oak, and I guess that's a common street like name,
Okay.
but it was very fitting. It was a twisted experience. But I remember going in and everything was fine. Like it was huge, all bills paid. Of course, when you're living alone, that is just like a godsend. And so it was all like redone and everything. But I guess that apartment complex had been there maybe since the 50s, 60s. And so I started staying over there, and I wouldn't describe like it as a bad thing, but when I think back on it, this feeling that I had all the time, I couldn't pinpoint it, but it was like you were being watched. Once I thought about it later on, it's like that uneasy feeling, like you're not alone, but
Mm,
you can't describe it.
right.
Um, so you don't really talk about it.
What room was there? Like a specific room, or was it when you were walking through like hallways?
It was my bedroom.
Oh, okay.
But when things started happening, it was right when I mean, my now husband, Chris, when he started staying over. So it's all his fault, you know, I'll blame it on him. But he started staying over, and that's when things started happening. And just, I remember it being my birthday shortly after uh, this stuff started happening too. I would hear tissue paper that I would leave out for my cat. I would hear tissue paper being moved around the room, but it wasn't my cat because my cat started staying in bed with me, which is just weird.
Hmm.
He would just be on the edge of the bed and alert and staring at everything that I would hear moving throughout the apartment.
Oh, so like if you woke up or if you like saw or heard something, then the cat would kind of perk up also?
Yeah, he was never relaxed either. And he's the most chill cat on earth.
Mm.
And he would hear everything that I would hear. And my husband would see him doing that too, like being alert, and blinds would be moved, like you know, the pulley for a blind, I remember it being like thrown to hit the blind really hard. It was just super weird. I'm like, why? And but
Wow.
Jim, the cat, would be under my bed sometimes during the day when I would come home. And I always thought that was really weird. But the thing that I know, I said it was my bedroom, but my dreams that I would have were the worst. It was just like brutal sometimes, like just things you can't even describe. And it was always in the apartment. It was always like just like death, body parts, like just disgusting. I can't even put it into words, but um I know like I know a lot of people have sleep paralysis, but this was something different. I remember my husband was staying over, and I sat up and I got up and I tried to turn on the lights, but they wouldn't turn on. And then I realized that I was still laying down and I had gotten up, you know. So I was either dreaming or whatever they call astral
Astral,
projecting.
yeah,
Yeah.
astral projection.
Wow.
And I was like, I couldn't turn on the lights. And so that kind of freaked me out. And I felt like I was being watched, or I heard something, and I turned and everything was dark, complete darkness. And I turned to my hallway door, and there was like a black mist, like something was kind of crouched down there. And like I knew it was there. And I was really in dreams as a kid. You know how you confront the monster so that you wake up? I
Yeah.
guess I had that in my head, but it didn't go as I had expected. Like I said, what do you want? And I ran at it and it shoved me back. And my husband even remembers me being like sitting up and to where I could barely breathe because it scared me so much.
Wow.
But it was not good. And so it just was not a dream, I felt like. And one time, and I would always try to say, oh, it'll be different. So I was like that freaking generic person in a haunted house that keeps staying there. I'm like, the next night will be perfect. It's all good.
You try to rationalize it. You try to make it more like, well, it's not a big deal. But this seems like something that was more tangible, something like kind of more physical than just bad dreams.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, the dreams continued. I remember being in my kitchen once in the dream. You know, it was dark once again. And I saw something like hiding in a corner. Like I saw it move and I was like, hello, I see you. And I was trying to talk at it again. Same thing, rushed at me, very violent. I woke back up. So it was always taking place in the apartment. And my husband, we would try to like go out to dinner and then come back, but we ended up, I mean, I eventually moved in with him just because I wasn't sleeping well and it was frightening. But I remember we came there, and it's always at night. We came there after we went to dinner and we tried to watch a movie, and we even made a little pallet on the floor. And I remember getting so sick, like, and I even got a nosebleed. And this is in the living room, but I felt like achy,
Yeah.
and I was just sick, and he was fine. But I just remember thinking, oh, I'm going to have to call into work. And then in the morning, it was fine
Wow.
and it went away and I wasn't sick.
That's wild. So it was always at nighttime, like you said?
Yeah. But so the dreams kind of continued, just weird, like waking up, seeing a light shining through my window, just weird things.
Mm-hmm.
And always thinking, oh, maybe it's a dream. And my husband would hear different things too, like I said. And I would stay up and like I would try to watch something funny so that I would go back to sleep and then I would never go to sleep. And I would finally go to sleep at maybe like 5 a.m. But it was always like bedroom was for some reason like I always felt something worse in there. And so I eventually move out, and and my parents too, like they had never dealt with anything like this, but they knew that I was like exhausted, like something was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And so I actually got to move in with my husband, and took my cat with me, so he got out of there too. And I remember showing the apartment like to my buddy who was going to take some of my furniture because he lived in the same complex, but he hadn't had anything happen. But we were just talking about stuff, and we were in the bedroom. This time it was in the daytime.
Mm.
And so I had gone back to get some stuff, and we were talking, and the lights in the bedroom went out all of a sudden in the ceiling fan. And he walked over and he like twisted the bulbs back in, so they had been uh untwisted at the same time.
Wait,
And
back up, back up. So explain that again. You're saying that the bulbs were physically untwisted out of their sockets?
yeah, they didn't fall out or anything, but they went out while we were in there, the ceiling light for the fan.
Simultaneously, two bulbs at the same time that were previously working, they just like unscrewed?
Yeah. And he screwed him back in and he goes, if that happens again, I'm running out. I'm not gonna keep it cool. And I even said something like, I'm gone, obviously I'm moving out, And so that happened, and I had to take sleeping pills for a while. Like even
Jeez.
in my new place, I was at rest, but not really.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept having the sleep paralysis stuff happen. So it really messed with my sleep on another level too.
Wow.
And and I get a call, and I told the apartment manager, I was like, I love your apartment, but this is why I'm breaking the lease, So I told her the truth, and she was the new manager and everything, didn't know about it. And she asked around about that apartment, and she called me and she said, so the guy that lives like across from you has lived there since I can't even remember when she said, but for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And she said that there was a woman that lived in there with her husband, and the woman got cancer, and the husband left her, and he could, and other neighbors too, and they would talk about it, they could hear her crying at night. And so she eventually dies, and you can guess, in the bedroom. And after she died, they said they could still hear her crying.
That is beyond spooky. That is beyond spooky. I mean, that's multiple accounts, people hearing the same thing, experiencing the same stuff. Did you ever hear about anyone else of the other tenants like having issues with sleeping?
No, that was the only information I got. But when she told me that, I remember getting goosebumps while I was on the phone with her
Yeah,
because
that's
it all
heavy.
started to make sense. Like I was single and everything was fine. And then when my husband showed up and when that other guy came in with me to get furniture, um, we started putting the pieces together that she had a hate for men.
So you think the male presence in all of these situations, you think a male presence sort of triggered that?
Yeah, she had, like I said before, it was obviously anger. Like it was, you just felt hate. Like
Wow.
whenever I saw that mist or saw those figures, it was always something's really mad. And so I guess that was the energy that she left behind. And I didn't hear anything else after that. I like kind of left it behind.
No kidding. So something I want to highlight is before this, did you encounter anything like this? And did you encounter anything after? Or was it just specifically this place, this time in your life?
Um, I always had like dreams. I've always been a very vivid dreamer.
Hmm.
And sadly, I kind of passed that on to my son, and I wish I could make it better for him. But I've always had that like active imagination. But other than that, I really haven't. But after that, it took me a long time to calm down. And I feel uh, like if I feel watched, I'll kind of freak out a little more. You know, that same feeling you're like, oh great. Like I was just telling my husband we stayed at the Mayo. That sounds like disgusting, but it's a really nice hotel in Tulsa.
Uh huh.
And it got closed down and they reopened it, but it was built in the 40s and they kept a lot of that style. So it's really, really nice. But they reopened it and I told him, I was like, that room we stayed in, like we had stayed in there, we've stayed in there about 3 times.
Hmm.
And but there was one room where I was like, something's watching, that whole
Oh.
time I had that feeling, but then I didn't sleep very well, but nothing happened beyond that. But I'm glad that I can recognize that feeling instead of just being like, oh, that's kind of weird.
Yeah, and it's such a it's such a distinct feeling that I think so many people do know that weird you can't really explain it, but that, I feel like I'm being watched feeling is the most eerie and uncomfortable thing, especially at night when you're trying to sleep.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So I guess a big thing with me is sleep. And it's weird that after, I told you I had to take sleeping pills. Well, after I got pregnant, after we were married and everything, the sleep paralysis stopped completely.
Oh, okay.
And so I feel like, I mean, uh, I don't know, a lot of people that I've talked to that are into otherworldly things, they would always say that, well, babies are so protected. Like
Mm.
that innocence is protected in different ways. So I always like to think of it as that. But I mean, yeah, getting pregnant was like one of the best things as far as that went too.
Wow. Yeah, so you feel that, being getting pregnant was sort of like it spiritually alleviated you from this kind of torment.
Oh yeah. And since I don't know, I'm sure that awful people get pregnant all the time, but I'm sure if you live a good life where you have, those guardian angels or something, like maybe you're left alone, like completely protected by
Yeah.
things that you can't see, but whether it be relatives or what.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, that was an incredible story. And we're so happy you were able to come on here and join us and share that. It sounds like a very traumatic experience, but I'm glad everything is better now.
Oh yeah, and my cat's all good too. He's fat and sleeping again.
Jim.
Yeah.
That's good. Ooh, yeah, I get chills because, like, I remember you telling that the first time, whenever we were telling ghost stories and everything. I get chills
So I
listening to
didn't,
that.
I mean, I was like, when you asked to have me on, I was like, I've told it so many times, I can probably just wing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're a good storyteller too, honestly. That's another reason why I thought of you because you have like you're really good at like, actually like I don't know, like telling a
Mm-hmm.
story.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you put us both right there. I mean, you really told us it sounded like extreme emotion was occurring for you. And yeah, again, you're just an excellent storyteller with it. So I felt like right there in that apartment with you.
Thank you. And it's just, I think it's emotional because, like, you know, I hear all these kids messing around with Ouija boards, and that's one thing. But then when they go so far and they like laugh about it and joke about it, in my head, I'm just thinking, no, you
Yeah.
don't want to mess with that. Like, don't go down that road. Like,
Yeah.
it's, you do not understand it. And I don't know. I don't think any of us really will, but don't open that door
Yeah.
because,
You don't know. Yeah, you don't know who's gonna walk through the door.
yes, don't even open, like, and I think I even addressed that like talking to her or it or whatever was like worse every time I mean, I didn't have a seance,
Do you,
but
what do
in
you
my
mean by that?
dreams, in
Like,
my dreams and stuff, when I would confront or say, like, I don't know, like when it was in the doorway, I'm like, what do you want? It like made it so much worse.
so engaging with it did not settle anything down. It seemed to just stir it up.
Yeah.
Wow.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's pretty frightening because, like you said, you know, most of the time in a bad dream, you do try to do the brave thing and confront the demon or confront the whatever is coming after you, and that sort of makes it disappear. But that's what makes this such a chilling story is that it seems you know it was obviously more than a dream. It seemed very tangible.
Yeah. Yeah. And it just, it'll suck the life out of you if you stay in places like that.
Whenever that was happening, was that like spiritually draining? I don't know what other kind of terms to use for that, but did you feel like a sense of just being drained throughout that time?
Yeah. When you start to lose sleep too, um,
Yeah.
that that is the ultimate. I mean, you get induced into comas for a reason. Your body needs sleep. It
Mm.
needs rest. And so more than anything it was that. But yeah, I had a hard time. Like, I don't know, I keep saying calming down, but I don't really know how else to put it. It's
Yeah.
not like I was screaming all the time, but just as far as like sleeping, being in a dark room, like like just different things like that. Um, and it took me a while to really love Halloween stuff again, like
Oh,
because
really?
this all happened when I had like my house decorated and stuff, and it got a little too real.
It sounds like you know your experience would definitely rattle anybody. So I could see why that was so traumatic.
Yes. And it's all, you know, the takeaway from this is that it's always the man's fault.
The moral of the story.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no, I'll agree with that. That seems to be true in this
Sorry.
case.
uh, I'm kidding. Everything happens for a reason, but I'm glad I got out there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Haley, again, thank you so much for coming on and sharing that story. That was incredible. If you have any other ghost stories, I hope you don't, because it sounds like you have really intense experiences. Feel free to come back on and share them with us. But until then, thanks again.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Thank
All right.
you.
Sweet dreams.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Honestly, that was pretty. That was a pretty intense story,
That's
right?
really spooky. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. What did you think when you first heard that? Because I know that you've heard her story before that.
Yeah, I think this is probably the third time I heard it. But like I believe her, obviously, you
Mhm.
know, like, well, and she's my friend too. Of course, I would not believe her, but like, just like the way she tells it too, like you can just hear the sincerity in her voice whenever she tells the story that this really happened to her, and like, it's not even just her, you know, it's her husband. She said, you know, witnessed some strange things, or at least her waking up from the dreams, and her cat
Yeah.
too, you know,
Multiple
like,
accounts. I mean, anytime you have a ghost experience or a paranormal experience like that, and you have multiple accounts, you know, for one thing, I think there's a pro and a con to it. The pro is that you probably don't feel crazy because at least everyone has seen something of it.
yeah.
So you don't feel like you're losing your mind. But the con is that it's kind of more terrifying.
Well, even just the fact that like she experienced all of this, and then she got the backstory after the fact.
Right.
So it's not like she like heard she had like this backstory and she kind of had it in her head and was kind of like scared and like
no
then kind of
preconceived
like
notions.
no,
Yeah.
like she experienced all this stuff and then she found out, oh, that a lady actually died in that apartment and it's from cancer and her husband left her while she was sick.
Ugh.
And all this started getting worse, like she said, whenever she started seeing her husband and he started coming over. So like it's just like I don't know.
It's like the perfect formula. It's like all the ingredients were there to create this apparition.
Well, and even like you know the scary movie The Grudge or whatever.
Yeah.
You remember that movie?
I remember it.
I can't remember exactly, like, I'm paraphrasing, but, like, at the beginning of the movie where they say, like, a place becomes haunted whenever, like, somebody dies with, like, an extreme emotion attached to it, like, whether that's, like, anger or even, like, sadness, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think this lady, like she said, this lady that passed away probably had a lot of anger in her heart whenever she died.
Absolutely.
And that almost left, like, some kind of imprint in that apartment. And I don't know.
Absolutely. I also love the idea of an apartment being haunted rather than like, I think we have this collective idea or picture of like only houses can be haunted. I don't know if I'm the only one who thinks that, but typically when I think of like a haunting, you know, I think of it being in a house.
Mm-hmm.
And something about an apartment is very like grounded in reality because you have so many people around you all stuffed into one building. Everyone's paying rent and they're all there. But like, so it doesn't seem like paranormal experiences would happen. Or if you heard things, you could just blame it on your next door neighbor, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So that's all to say that like a haunting in an apartment is more convincing to me than just being in a house alone, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's pretty freaky. Well, that was a great one. Let's jump on to our next caller.
Okay.
Okay, our next guest, we have George coming in with a good spooky tale. Hey, George, how you doing?
I'm good. It's good to see you guys.
Yeah, it's great to see you, man. I'm wondering, do you have a background? Is that like a what's going on behind you?
That's just what my bedroom looks like. It's
Cryptid forest.
yeah, and like my bed and some pictures, some fog.
Perfect. It really sets the mood. So
Yeah.
to start things off, we want to know a little bit like, do you have much of a history with encountering paranormal, or have you ever encountered the paranormal, you know, before this story takes place?
So let me put it this way. As a young man, I had an obsession with seeking those kinds of encounters. And where I grew up, there's a very spooky history. There's all kinds of great ghost stories from around where I lived. Some famous ghosts, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. But I would go very out of my way and really push my comfort level and try to get into a one-on-one experience with whatever's out there, whatever's peeking in through the other side.
Ooh.
And I've maybe felt some run-ins, but nothing where I could say like positively this was a ghost that I ran into. Nothing ever came in to my room like carrying its own head in its hand, was like, George, I'm a ghost, I'm here to talk to you. Like thus far I haven't had that experience, but the same way, you know, I I haven't run into any Bigfoots in the forest, but that doesn't mean I disbelieve or believe either way. I imagine some of the people who are going to hear this have heard this story and perhaps heard it told a different way. It's a really common story that's been being told, at least in the area where I grew up. It's been told since the 1930s, and I've heard a couple of versions of it. But I'll tell you, the one that got to me first and what sucked me in, there's a stretch of road near where I grew up. And so going back to the 30s, there's a guy driving down the road late at night. It's not a lot of street lights out there. It's kind of a wooded area. On the side of the road, he goes, obviously this girl shouldn't be just walking down the street by herself at this time of night. So he pulls over, it's a little more innocent times back then where you would take a ride from a stranger. And he says, "Hey, it's too cold out here. Get in my car. I'll take you where you need to go." So the girl gets in his car. They travel down the way, and he's asking her some questions, but she's being like real cagey, right about herself. And so some of the limited information he's able to pick up from her is that her name is Mary. She lives nearby. She's got her cardigan sweater wrapped around her ball gown, apparently. At some point, she takes it off during the car ride. And at a certain point, she's like, "Okay, you need to just drop me off right here." And he's like, "Well, I'll take you all the way to your house." And she's like, "No, just drop me off here. I live in that house over there, but don't pull into the driveway." And so she's kind of a sketchy chick for a 1930s side of the road wanderer. But he lets her out, just has this eerie feeling, starts driving home, and then realizes that she left her cardigan in his car. So he goes back the next day to the house that she pointed to, knocks on the door, and this old lady answers, and he's like, "Oh, does Mary live here?" And the lady's like, "What do you know about Mary?" And he's like, "Gave her a lift home last night, and she left her sweater in my car. I'm a nice guy. I'm not being a creep. I just want to return it." And the old lady's like really freaked out by him. She's like, "Why are you doing this?" She's like, I'm just trying to be a nice guy." And over her shoulder, from what I'm told, he could see like a picture of the same girl who was in his car, so he knows he's in the right place. And he's like, "No, I swear Mary told me this is her house. I'm just trying to drop off her sweater." And the lady's getting more and more freaked out. She kind of starts crying a little bit, and she's like, "Well, Mary's been dead for 20 years.
Ooh.
And so this has been a recurring phenomenon on this stretch of road. The story goes that Mary was coming home from a big dance at this place called the Willowbrook Ballroom that night. And so in my attempts to seek out the paranormal, I've visited the Willowbrook Ballroom. I've cruised this stretch of road over and over. And throughout the area, there's tons of people who will tell you their own story of meeting with Mary. Resurrection Cemetery, it's near Willowbrook Ballroom. It's a massive cemetery with these huge, like, steel fences all around it, these massive steel gates. So some people say that when they picked up Mary off the side of the road, as they're taking her back to her house, when they start getting near the cemetery, she starts getting really agitated. And by the time they're in front of those gates, she's screaming and like pulling her hair and banging on the dashboard so much that like whoever's got her has to pull over. And then some of the stories say that she completely vanishes from the car. Like she'll be in there 1 minute and you go past the cemetery, maybe she freaks out, maybe she's just being cagey, and she'll vanish.
Yeah.
Other people say she'll go like running from the car. So there's a bunch of stories about this. One of the stories I've heard is that sometimes if you drive by Resurrection Cemetery at the right time of night, you'll see her trying to get out of the cemetery. And so when I was an impressionable young man and people were telling me these ghost stories that I couldn't get enough of, one of my friend's older brothers told me that they had been looking for her one night. This is what we did to entertain ourselves in those days. But they were cruising past the cemetery and they saw her standing at the gate trying to get out, and that she was like bending the bars of the gate. And that
Wait.
seemed pretty far-fetched.
So they saw this? They saw
That's what they claimed to have seen. And no joke, when I went cruising by there a day later, there was a section of the gate where like the bars had obviously been replaced.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's pretty freaky.
Yeah, it's definitely super creepy. Visiting the Willowbrook Ballroom, the people there who this old lady was there when I went. She was super nice, was super happy to give me like a rundown of the history. And it's one of those places where you could just feel a kind of eeriness seething off of this place.
Yeah.
Same with that whole stretch of road. It's like a wooded, dark roadway. And some of the stories are that Mary was coming home from the dance at the Willowbrook Ballroom one night, spurned by her young teenage lover, maybe ditched at the dance or something. So she either decides to walk home or is forced to walk home and then never makes it home,
Uh,
buried in Resurrection Cemetery. So it leaves this like wandering spirit. The thing is, like, if you research the story, you're going to find very similar stories across every culture on Earth. Like any culture where they have roadways,
uh-huh.
there is a vanishing hitchhiker story.
Isn't it kind of like the woman in white too? Isn't that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Like in Supernatural, like
Yeah.
that whole show starts off with them like running down the woman in white. And when I watch these things, I'm like, oh, this is about Resurrection Mary. Like everyone where I grew up knows who Resurrection Mary is. So I don't know how like common it is and how much crossover there is between the Resurrection Mary story and some of these stories from elsewhere. But it's one of those things like everybody knows about her. Everybody knows the exact trail, like where to go looking for her. And in the
Yeah.
days before internet was popular, this is what we would do. We would go freak ourselves out on a Friday night. And I can tell you from personal experience, like that whole stretch of road and everywhere around Resurrection Cemetery at night, it makes you feel very weird being around there.
Yeah, I can imagine so. I mean, some places have that energy, and it's so hard to describe unless you feel it. But I know exactly what you're talking about.
Hard to say. You know, she never got in my car, but my car wasn't very cool.
Yeah, that might have saved you, I guess.
Maybe, yeah.
Well, hey, thanks so much for calling in and sharing your story. We hope to hear some more if you ever encounter anything else.
I hope I do.
Yeah, well, we heard some pretty freaky stories earlier that were, you know, it was hard to like wish that upon someone to say like, hey,
Yeah.
we hope you get some good stories so you can come back and tell us. Like, you know, maybe sometimes you're better off not having a good, you know,
I
terrifying,
feel that, yeah.
traumatic story.
That's kind of what I gained from all these experiences as a young man trying to seek this stuff out and really freaking myself out a bunch of times was by the end of the night, you're sorry that you went looking for it in the first place. So maybe, hopefully I never have anything else to report to you.
Well, if you do, you know who to call. We'll be here.
You got it. Thanks, guys.
All right, man. We'll talk to you later. Have a good one. All right, let's discuss it. So that was Jorj came in with like a really, I think, you know, it was one of those stories that even though I had never heard my own local version of it, you can tell that you can kind of sense that this was a reoccurring thing.
Yeah.
And I've even seen videos that are describing this exact same thing where you know, reports of like some woman being on the side of a road, you know, not super well traveled road, and there's just like a woman out there in the middle of nowhere, and you kind of have to ask yourself, if you're in that position, what would you do, you know?
Well, I think with now, like you said, it's like more common to not pick up people at the side of the road because, you know, we're just more distrusting now, for better or worse.
Right.
But what I've heard a lot of times, because like what I've heard a lot of it is referred to as like the woman in white. And so a lot of times, you know, she kind of preys on men more so than women. And like she will get in their car and basically, I think, only like kill them or something if they're like unfaithful.
Oh.
So it's like a test of like fidelity almost.
Ooh.
But that was also like how it was in like Supernatural, like you said. But in like urban legends that I've heard a lot of times, like that's like part of it.
Yeah, the only urban legend that I've heard around our local parts, it's always a crybaby bridge. And I think
Yeah.
that I think that is a national phenomenon.
Yeah.
I think that every small town in most states have a crybaby bridge, some kind of story about a woman and her baby, getting in a wreck off of a bridge.
Oh, I didn't even know if it was. I didn't know it was a woman and a baby.
Yeah, because the baby didn't wander out there. I think the baby's in that's the idea. Is that
I thought it was always like Crybaby Bridge was somebody like just jumping off a bridge and committing suicide.
Yeah, I don't know. I've always heard like it's always something to do with like a car wreck or something like that. And to even fit it better, like growing up around here, we actually did have a really old rusty bridge, and there was like a 1950s model car down below the bridge. The drop wasn't like anything crazy. It was only like maybe 15 feet.
Yeah.
But that was a really solid way to sell that story of Crybaby Bridge. But anyway, that was awesome. I'm so glad Jorj was able to come on here and share that story. Viewers, if you have heard a similar story in your neck of the woods, we want to hear it, especially people who are not from the States. I want to know if this is like something that is retold across the world. I mean, global legend. Hey, we know we have 20% of our listeners are based in the UK, and we love you guys. So let us know what you think. Appreciate it. But that was great. I'm so glad Jorj was able to hop on. Let's go to our last caller.
Okay.
All right, and our final caller of the evening, joining us is Nicole. Nicole has some spooky stories to share with us this evening. How are you, Nicole?
Hello, everybody. I'm doing well. Thanks, Bryce. How are you guys?
We're excellent. We're just happy to have you. So, Nicole, we're friends. I know you've given me a little bit of detail about your past experiences when you were younger, and I think that's some of the stuff you were going to share tonight, right?
Yeah, it was actually hard to choose what stories to share because I've actually had quite a few, but I am going to focus on the house that I grew up in.
Okay, excellent.
I had quite a few experiences there.
So just to preface really quick, I'm curious if you, it sounds like you've had like a lot of paranormal run-ins in your life. Do you think you're like sensitive to that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think I am, and I think my sister is as well. And just something interesting that's a little kind of segue, but I was singing, I'm a singer, and I was singing at a concert in Missouri one evening. And afterwards, people were congratulating me and shaking my hand. And one woman in particular shook my hand and then she grabbed it tighter and she said, "Hang on a second, I can feel your energy and you're sensitive and I really need to read you." And I had the same experience in Austria after a concert with a woman who actually was from Canada. But she came up to me out of nowhere and she said, "I can tell that you sense things and you're sensitive."
Wow.
And yeah, so yeah, I've been told by a couple people I've never known. I don't know if it's like an energy thing that those people can feel, but I have in my life had just some unique experiences.
Yeah, I would have to guess so. And and I know that you are a world traveling performer. That's what makes it so exciting to hear some of your stories because it just seems like you encounter so many people in different places and rich history across the world. So
Yeah, a lot of history.
so when you're traveling, have you encountered a lot of things like in old buildings?
The only thing that I really have encountered that was just like blatant to me was in an old Roman, actually, it was an old Roman sewer below the city of Cologne, Germany.
Mm-hmm.
And so in Europe, a lot of cities have underground cities because the Roman cities are actually underground, and then the more modern cities were built on top of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of that stuff under there is still preserved or has been discovered through different excavations or projects for the city. And so in Cologne, for example, and this is all over Europe and even in the United States too, but in Cologne, you can actually just find places where you can go down these stairs and go down into the old Roman city, the old Roman sewers. And you don't pay a ticket. There's nobody there to give you a tour. You can just go down there by yourself. So I was actually down in one with some friends. Again, I was over there for a concert, and it was before a concert. But we went down there, and I remember my friends were taking photos kind of far away. And so it was just me and this long tunnel. And I remember walking down this long tunnel and having this distinct feeling that I wasn't alone.
Ooh.
And it's an odd feeling if you've ever felt it before. It's like the hair raises on the back of your neck and you just know somebody's with you.
Yeah.
So I would turn around and nobody would be there. And so I decided to start getting my camera and start taking photos. And it was a film camera at the time. I didn't actually have a cell phone at that. This was back in 2007. And so I started taking photos. And when I got back to the States and I developed the photos, I was actually shocked to see a ball of light in one of them. And then in 4 others that I had taken almost the same exact time, there was nothing. And then also in another one, there was like a kind of a weird misty substance. So who knows what that was? But I would say that is probably my most memorable experience.
Yeah, and I love that you highlighted that distinct feeling of something watching you. That is something we talked about earlier with Haley, who called in with her story, and we discussed how it's such an indescribable feeling, but it's very distinct whenever you do feel it, and it is very uncomfortable.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it is almost like that sixth sense, like you feel something, but you can't explain it. You can't
yeah,
see it,
yeah.
you can't touch it, you can't smell it. There's something inside you that says you're not alone.
Absolutely, yeah. So go ahead and tell us about your the house that you. I don't know if this is the one you grew up in, or is this just a childhood home?
It was the house I grew up in. So I was born in Iowa, and Iowa itself actually has a lot of history and haunted connections. Probably the most famous one is the Villisca axe murder house, if you guys have ever heard of that.
I haven't.
Ooh, it's probably Iowa's most famous haunted house. In June of 1912, it's still unsolved, by the way, but somebody went into this house in Villisca, Iowa, and murdered 8 people with an axe.
Oh my gosh.
And so there are a lot of stories about things that happen in the house. You can actually pay to spend the night. And I've known a lot of people who've done that and had really crazy experiences. I've even listened to EVPs from them and seen one photograph that somebody took of the window of the house and somebody's peeking out. And so anyway, it is a creepy house. I've driven by it, but I've never had the guts to go in. But yeah, anyway, Iowa has a lot of rich history. And I grew up in a really small town called Marshalltown. And Marshalltown itself has been featured on some ghost shows, on the Travel Channel and things like that, just for some haunted locations there. But the house I grew up in, and by the way, I'm not endorsing that my house was haunted. I'm not saying that whoever lives there now has a haunted house, but I'm just going to report what I experienced as a child there. So I moved there with my parents when I was probably about 12 months old. And I lived there all the way through my senior year of high school. So it was where I spent the majority of my childhood. And so my house was built, I'm not entirely sure, but it seems like it's built between 1900 and 1925. So it's an older house. So we had a basement and 2 stories. And you would think that the basement would be the creepiest place, but actually all of the activity that I experienced was on the 2nd floor. So on the 2nd floor, there was a bathroom, then there was my parents' room, my room, and my sister's room, and a very small hallway connecting all of those rooms. And so the thing that one of my earliest childhood memories is actually seeing floating balls of light all over the place in the hallway upstairs and also in the upstairs bathroom.
Wow.
And
How
my
big were they?
sister, they, I would say that they were about the size of like a baseball. I mean,
Wow.
they're just, yeah, and they would be pretty quick and they would just fly around. And so my sister and I, we would call them beef balls because we didn't know what they were. So we called them our friends and we named them beef balls. they, they were these flying balls of light. But what's kind of weird is one day my aunt and my uncle from Nashville, Tennessee came with their two sons, and they were upstairs in the hallway. And one of the sons, who was probably about two, said, "What's that ball of light in the corner, Mom?" And she couldn't see anything. And so they took a photograph, and there's a ball of light next to my cousin. And so my sister and I, you say, oh, well, kids are going to see things or it's their imagination.
Hmm.
But what's really more poignant is that my parents actually also experienced weird things in the house too.
Really?
Yeah, so going back to that hallway, one afternoon, my sister was downstairs playing and I was upstairs playing in the hallway. And I had that feeling that I wasn't alone. And I looked up and I actually saw a man. And I remember what he was wearing. He had brown pants and he had a yellow plaid shirt. And he looked like he was from the 20s. He had like one of those golf, like Newsies hat.
Right. Like I know exactly. It's kind of like a thick threaded hat kind of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I saw him. He didn't say anything. He didn't even look at me. And it was almost just like a split second and he was gone. I just saw him in the hallway and then he was gone.
Wow.
So what's even weirder is this was years later. But leading up to that, there were still some weird things that would always happen upstairs. But my mom got up one night to use the restroom and she's in the bathroom and the door opens slightly and there's a man standing there and she
Ooh.
thinks it's my dad. And so she goes back to bed, and this, by the way, this figure of this man, it didn't say anything, it just was standing in the door.
Mhm.
So she goes back to bed and dad's sound asleep. So the next morning mom asked him about it and he had no idea what she was talking about. And so my mom thinks that she also saw a man upstairs in the hallway.
Wow. Was he wearing the same thing too? Like,
No, she reported him as just a dark figure. Like she couldn't make out any features.
yeah.
Just a kind of like a dark shadow. And she
Oof.
thought it was my dad standing there waiting to go to the bathroom. And this was in the middle of the night, so it was dark too.
Wow.
Yeah, and my sister, in addition to seeing those floating lights, she actually saw a little girl run up from our basement stairs into our living room. And so she thought it was me, but I was upstairs. And so
Oh,
that's
wow.
just another story we always talk about. And my dad always he never saw anything, he never heard anything, but he always felt like the house affected him emotionally. And
Sure.
so, yeah, that could be a whole other podcast in itself, but there were a lot of times when he felt like the house was affecting him.
Did you ever find out, like, I guess maybe about the people that lived there before you, like, or anything?
Actually, that's a great point, Mariah, because I tried to do some research on the house. And I think what I would have to do is actually just go to the Marshalltown Library to pull old records, but I have never been able to find anything on the house itself. And actually, if you go today, like online or go on Zillow or, all the houses in the neighborhood are on there. You can look up the history, but for some reason that one isn't. And
Weird.
I don't know if it also has to do with a weird address. It was 1106 and a half. So
Hmm.
it wasn't a
Really?
half house, but we shared a driveway with my neighbor. So my neighbor was 1106. and then we were 1106 and a half.
Huh.
So I don't know if that also makes it harder to find anything.
Yeah.
But I've never actually done any research on the house itself. Now, across from the street from me was a big high school built in 1927, which has its own stories. So it was the town's high school until the 70s when they made it the middle school, and that's where I attended the middle school. But it was built in 1927 and pretty creepy in itself. And that was right across the street from me, too.
Wow. So if you, I don't know if you have this information, but when was this town established?
In the 1800s, I know that for a fact.
Uh-huh.
And one of the biggest draws was the Iowa Veterans Home. So Marshalltown was the county seat of Marshall County, but also home to where all of the veterans would go for care after wars
Mm-hmm.
or being in the service. And so and it's still there today. And actually my mom was a nurse there for over 30 years, and she has the most incredible stories of that particular facility.
Like being haunted or like having spiritual encounters.
Yeah, and it's very well known throughout Marshalltown about that building being very haunted. It's called Hines Hall, and it was built in I want to say the 1880s, and it was the first building on I'll call it the campus of the
Uh-huh.
Iowa Veterans Home. And since then, there are a lot of other buildings, but there are quite a few stories. Um, Actually, growing up, I knew more people who had weird experiences or ghost stories than not. And it's not something that everybody would just go around and talk about, but there were a lot of things that happened. And when I think about my childhood, a lot of it has to do with kind of creepy stories, because we just knew a lot of people in Marshalltown who had those kinds of stories.
That's
Wow.
so interesting. This is the first time I'm ever hearing of like a phenomenon where there's a town that is just so rich in history and hauntings that it's kind of a normalized thing.
Yeah, and there's a house called the Vortex House in Marshalltown on Main Street, and yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff in my hometown that is pretty
Yeah.
interesting and unexplained.
Have you ever looked up into we might do this after this podcast, but I'm curious to see if there's any good paranormal investigation videos on the various buildings in that town. I think that would be super interesting.
Yeah, the only one I know of officially is a house that was featured on the Dead Files. It's a show, I believe, on the Travel Channel.
Okay.
But this particular house was paranormally investigated. I don't know about any other official ones in Marshalltown.
So have you ever, I guess, like since moving away, have you had any kind of like experiences or anything like that since then?
Yeah. So my husband and my now husband, we rented a house in Norman where we live now, and it was close to the University of Oklahoma campus. And one night we were both in bed, and we both distinctly heard somebody say, "Hey," just to the side of the bed that my husband was on.
Mm-hmm.
And we both sat up because we both heard it, which was really weird because we both heard it at the same time.
Yeah.
And it sounded like his grandpa, and his grandpa had just passed away the week before.
Oh.
And we actually thought that somebody was in the house. And so Matt got up and he was checking every single room, and there was nobody there. And after we talked about it, then that's when we kind of thought, well, that was really weird. And it also really sounded like your grandpa. So who knows what that was.
Yeah.
But yeah, it, I have a lot of interesting things about people who've passed away too,
Mm-hmm.
and having weird encounters
Mhm.
with those people,
Mm-hmm.
my grandparents specifically. So yeah, it's interesting and unexplained, and
Yeah.
um, that
That's
could be.
I was just gonna say, I mean, you're obviously a very sensitive being, or it seems like some people have susceptibility isn't really the right word, but just an openness about them that allows for these experiences to kind of take place. And that's something I'm hearing a lot of. It seems like some people experience more than others, and that's a really interesting thing in itself. But what I love about your story growing up there in Marshalltown is, again, how normalized it was for everyone and how there were multiple accounts in your own household.
Yeah, it's you know, growing up, it wasn't like every day something would happen, or it was like a scary place to come home to. I wouldn't say that's what it ever felt like. It was just, yeah, we had weird experiences in that house, and we all did. And there were things that I saw that cannot be explained. And I still remember them clear as day. And I know they weren't my imagination.
Yeah. Do some of these things come back to you as an adult, and you look back and you're like, wait a minute, that was something different than what I thought? Or
No, that's weird. Yeah, actually, I have never thought like, oh, you know, that was just me making stuff up.
oh no, I meant the opposite. Like you grow up and you realize that, because maybe as a kid, beef balls was like your friends, but like growing up, you kind of you have one of those moments where it hits you. You're like, wait a minute, what is beef balls? What is that?
Right. Yeah. Actually, yeah, the kind of the like knowing about the beef balls, and oh, maybe those are, you know, in the spiritual world they call them orbs. But I kind of started figuring that out around, you know, middle school and high school. I loved watching haunted shows and documentaries and paranormal investigations. So I loved watching all that stuff, and that's when I kind of thought, oh, I think that's, you know, what we were seeing were these balls of light, because there are a lot of people who've captured them on camera too, and it's very similar to what my sister and I would see.
Wow. Well, that's incredible. Well, Nicole, I don't want to take up your whole night. It seems like you've had a busy weekend, but we are so appreciative you were able to call in and tell us a little bit more about Marshalltown. Yeah, we want to dig in more and learn more about this place, because I'm gonna start Googling away. So,
Hey, yeah, do I will too. Actually, I'm curious to know if there's more out there.
absolutely. Well, Nicole, again, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Maybe we'll hear some more stories in the future.
Definitely. Thanks for having me on.
So, what did you think? It's been a long day. It's been a really long day. We bit off more than we can probably chew. Doing 3 calls in one session actually took up a lot of time, but we had a really good time and we loved the stories. But going forward, we might just do like one story.
We'll schedule it one a day.
Something. We'll do something different. I don't know what we'll do different, but it was great to hear back from we loved having Haley, Jorj, and Nicole on.
Yeah.
And they were amazing and offered some really interesting stories. So lots to think about.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I know that throughout this entire session this evening, my camera that's looking at me has stopped working and then continued working and then stopped working.
Audio anomalies.
Yeah, video anomalies. But so I'll have to work around that. I'm sure you'll see it in the edit. We're going to make it work. So, thank you for your patience on this second episode. This is a little experimental for us, but going forward, it's going to be a little bit more of a controlled situation. And, but yeah, we've been sitting here for like 4 hours.
We've eaten a lot of cookies and candy corn and a lot of Americano.
Yeah,
So it's a great diet.
This has been pretty rough on
I'm like
our
shaking
health.
visibly right now. So much sugar and espresso.
I know we're finally going to eat dinner after this, but no, it's been a lot of fun, and we're really happy that you've stuck it out with us. And there's not a whole lot I can say that I haven't already said. After Nicole's interview, I think just the fact that there was multiple accounts experiencing the same phenomena, in this town, Marshalltown.
Mm-hmm.
That was really fascinating, and I got to go on a deep dive on there. Hey,
and
paranormal,
her whole family too.
Yeah, her whole
family. Mom to her dad to her sister to her. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Paranormal investigators, if you have ever gone to Marshalltown in Iowa, let us know. Drop a link. We would love to check that out. That's something I really am interested in looking at.
Mm-hmm.
Also, paranormal investigators, I would love to feature your content on our channel, at the beginning of the show whenever we preview a paranormal video. So again, use that email, y.files.team@gmail.com, and we would love to hear from you. And there's not much else I have to say about tonight's episode. It's been a lot. It's been a lot of fun. I look forward to doing Ghost Stories Declassified again.
Well, did you want to tell your story?
Okay, so I actually have a little bit of a story for just to close out this Ghost Stories Declassified. It's actually not a ghost story, and it wasn't a paranormal encounter, but it was a dream that I had a few months back. And it was one of those dreams where you could just pick up on every single detail. Like you could smell things. You know those dreams where you can hear things a very specific way, you can smell things in a very specific way. That makes it very real, very tangible. Well, this was a dream of my great grandpa, and he owned the house that we're in right now. And him and my grandma, they both lived here since the 50s. This was their home. And my great grandpa, he passed away after living like a super, great long life. He passed away in 2014, and he was just like the sweetest man to ever exist. And so I had this dream with him. We're walking out of a building towards his car. His car is like a gray sedan with like a red interior, like a red plushy, velvety looking interior. And we walk down to his car. We're chit-chatting away, and he opens his door. And as soon as he opens his door, I can just smell it. I smell the interior of his car. And it floods that. It was so real. Like I smelled it. It was so real. And he looks at me and he says, take care of the house. And that was like, I was like, okay, sure, I will. I didn't know what else to say. It's just like one of those reassuring moments. And it was very peaceful. It was a very quick, but such a detailed dream.
And then you found out too that.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I asked my mom about it, or I told her about it, and she was like, he had that car. That was a real car before I was born.
And you didn't know it,
I had
obviously, because it was before your mom was born.
I had no idea.
So he actually had that same exact car that you saw in your dream.
Yeah, and I could tell you, I can't remember what it was now, but it was like one of those typical, like maybe it was built in the 80s or late 70s, a gray sedan with red interior. And it had that specific smell to it. And it was just so real that's what I felt compelled to tell my mom and my family about it. Because it felt so real, and I've never had a dream like that where I felt like I had to relay a message.
Yeah.
Where I was like, I had to say, hey, Grandpa told me to take care of the house.
Well, that smell too is that same smell that you said that this house smelled like, right? And it's because it smelled like them, and
A little bit.
and still even every now and then, like it has that same smell. Like we've lived here for a while now, but like every now and then, like you'd say that you catch it like whiffs.
Yeah, it's a
that
very
scent.
distinct smell. It's very distinct. It's hard to describe, but it does come in like moments, weird areas of the house. But anyway, I wanted to wrap up this episode with a little personal touch there, and it was a really, really good experience. But I'm again so grateful for Haley, Jorj, and Nicole coming on tonight to tell us their really interesting stories. Haley's
you.
was terrifying. George's was super interesting because we want to know if other people have experienced those urban legends. And Nicole's was just plain interesting.
Yeah.
So again, join us for our next episode, probably next month. So again, thank you for liking, subscribing, and commenting on our first video. We hope you enjoy this one. Let us know what you think about this episode. Feel free to tweet at us at YFiles Podcast using the hashtag YFilesPod. We would love to continue this discussion on Twitter. And if you have an interesting ghost or paranormal encounter that you want to talk about here on the show, we want to feature you. Email us at y.files.team@gmail.com. We hope to hear from you. All right.
Okay, I just want to give one word sneak peek for next episode.
What is it?
Bigfoot.
You heard it here. All right. Bye.
Bye.